Welcome to Gwinnett County Public Library's Community Conversations. Today's topic, food insecurity, food deserts, and urban farming in Gwinnett. Our partner for this series is the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. I am Ron Goche, and I am the Youth Services Community Partnerships Manager for Gwinnett County Public Library System. Tonight's moderator is Dr. Paul Grant. He is an associate professor of political science in the School of Liberal Arts at Georgia Gwinnett College. He teaches American government, state and local government, and Georgia politics courses. His published and presented research topics includes race, ethnicity, and politics, legislative studies, and state government and politics. Dr. Grant studied the social, political, and economic climate of South Africa 10 years after the end of apartheid on a Fulbright Hays Fellowship. He is a member of the GGC Sustainability Committee and co-founder of the GGC Community Microforum. Dr. Grant, welcome.
Thank you, Ron, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to a community conversation. This is our fourth in a series of discussions produced by Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition, presented by Gwinnett County Public Library. In January, our conversation was entitled Honoring Charles Hale. The program included Reverend Ingberg Williams. She is the niece of Charles Hale, a victim of a lynching on the Lawrenceville Courthouse Square in 1911. She was joined by Ray Harvin and Steve Babb, members of the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition. The coalition is working with the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama, to recognize victims of lynching and to promote diversity and inclusion in Gwinnett. The February program featured authors Drs. James and Wendy Taylor and their book entitled The Imperfect Storm: Racism in a Pandemic Collide in America. Drs. Taylor gave an in-person book talk at the library in Little Bern on the challenges of racism and COVID-19 in public schools. Last month, we examined Gwinnett Beyond the Numbers with Luke Wynn, a U.S. Census Bureau data specialist. Mr. Wynn discussed Gwinnett County demographics, shared county data from the 2020 census, and introduced census website data tools and explained to viewers how to use them. This evening, we will have a community conversation about food insecurity, food deserts, and urban farming in Gwinnett. We're glad you're able to join us. In the United States of America, the wealthiest among nations, hunger continues to be an intractable problem. As a result of COVID-19 and unemployment, food insecurity has increased. Feed America reports in 2020, over 60 million people used food banks and community programs to receive food. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates 38 million people are food insecure, and of those, 12 million are children. And while federal nutrition programs such as SNAP, or the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, exist, many households do not qualify. Food insecurity is particularly problematic in communities of color and with children and senior citizens. In Georgia, nearly half the households receiving SNAP benefits include children. In Georgia, 1 in 9 face hunger, and that ratio for children is 1 in 7. Food insecure Georgians report needing nearly an additional $660 million per year to meet their food needs. Gwinnett County reports over 80,000 food residents and 10,000 meals are missed annually. This evening, we will hear from 3 leaders representing Gwinnett County organizations working diligently to reduce food insecurity. Joining us tonight is Tim Daly. Tim Daly is the Agriculture and Natural Resources Extension Agent for the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension for Gwinnett County. He's a native Atlantan. Tim holds 2 degrees from the University of Georgia, a BS in horticulture and an MS in entomology. Tim, I guess that makes you a double dog, right? I know you're particularly happy this year. Congratulations. Yep. He has been employed by UGA Cooperative Extensions for 15 years. As an extensions agent, he conducts many programs for homeowners, landscaping professionals, small farmers, and he oversees over 200 master gardeners through the Extensions Volunteers Program. Also joining us this evening is Lisa Ingberg. Lisa is the Director of Development and Communications for the Lawrenceville Cooperative Ministries. She recently joined the co-op staff in the fall of 2021. Lisa holds a marketing degree from the University of Tennessee, and she has worked in both the corporate and nonprofit sectors. Co-op, Lisa primarily works with community churches and businesses to increase awareness of the co-op's programs and its needs. Lisa loves presenting to groups and sharing the mission and vision of the Lawrenceville Co-op. I'm glad she does, and I'm happy she's with us this evening to discuss the fine work that the co-op does. And welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Lindsay Jorstad. And Lindsay is the Deputy Department Director for Gwinnett County's Department of Community Services. Lindsay is a graduate of Georgia Southern University and holds a bachelor's degree in Recreation and Tourism Management. She has worked in public administration for over 15 years and currently oversees the department's community engagement and collaboration teams, which implement strategic initiatives to serve Gwinnett's multi-generational and multicultural communities. Lindsay was identified by the National After School Association in 2017 as a next generation of after school honoree and received an award for health equality in 2019. She is a member of Leadership Gwinnett Class of 2022 and serves on the board of Gwinnett United in Drug Education. Lindsay considers herself a park and recs kid at heart. She works within the out-of-school time community to eliminate barriers while advocating for positive youth development, expanded healthcare resources, and access to food, physical fitness, and mental health services. From multimedia platforms, wellness programs, volunteer impact opportunities, and education on the go, Lindsay leads with a public servant heart. I really like that. I really like that, Lindsay. Well, I have a history with all your organizations. And let me just begin by just thanking you all for the fine work that you do throughout Gwinnett, but especially with Georgia Gwinnett College and the work that we've been doing with our micro farm since 2009. So again, thank you all for joining us this evening. And I think I'd like to begin with Lisa, if you don't mind.
Sure. Fire away.
And please give Tom my regards. I know he's having a wonderful time. But Lisa, tell us a little bit about the Lawrenceville Cooperative Ministries. When was it founded? What's some of the work that you do? We know about the food bank, or at least I do, but maybe everyone else doesn't, and some of the other fine services that you provide.
Sure. So the co-op actually was founded in 1995, and it was a group of churches that came together. They were seeing a continual need of every Monday. They'd come into the office and there'd be a group of families that needed food assistance, and they just didn't have the room to keep the food on site. And nor did they have an ability to figure out what is it that's causing these families to need food. How can we not just give them food, but how can we give them services? How can we not just put a Band-Aid on it? How can we fix the problem? So the churches came together and created the Lawrenceville Cooperative Ministry. And we've grown over the years. We really do a good job with food, and that's what we work on. But as I mentioned, we want to make sure our clients have resources to help them get out of whatever it is that's causing their food insecurity. So we partner with a lot of organizations. GGC, we do the food pantry for GGC. We work with Village of Hope, which is an organization that on the weekends takes food to school children because they aren't getting their breakfast and lunch during the week. We work with veterans because we know so many of our veterans are food insecure and need help. And recently in the last year, we've spent a lot of time with COVID with the Lawrenceville Response Center. That was a program that was created to help those who were impacted by COVID, not just food, but also utilities, places to live, medical care, things like that. So we do our best to not only get food on the table for our clients, but also to figure out how we can help them, to better their lives and to not have to worry about what's going on with just food, just to get out of it.
And I know you haven't been there long, but I'm sure you have learned the history and you know the work the institution has done. And it kind of speaks to what I shared in the introduction, this kind of this challenge that seems to be intractable, that on the one hand, we're the wealthiest nation, and Gwinnett County is a very prosperous county in many respects, but yet we still have people who are food insecure. And I know that you and Lindsay are seeing this, not from 30,000 feet, but on the ground level. But can you speak to some of the things that you're seeing, some of the reasons? We know COVID's been difficult, but what are you seeing out there?
Well, it's interesting. 21% of Lawrenceville residents live at the poverty level. And the poverty level for a family of four is around $48,000 a year, which is next to nothing when you think about that number. You think about the fact that right now a one-bedroom apartment costs between $1,500 and $1,800 a month. You really quickly have your entire salary gone between rent, and then you've got to get insurance and you've got to get food and gas, especially with prices going up with gas. So it's really easy to just make it. You can just get by. And by having a little bit of extra food in the pantry, it can help you to stay afloat. The other thing that we really noticed during the pandemic was people lost jobs for a season. And so they were looking for a way of getting back so they would be able to utilize us for 3 to 6 months and get back on their feet. And then they didn't need our services quite as much. There's also a lot of school children. I was sharing with Lindsay a little earlier. Last week was spring break. And typically Gwinnett County would have fed their students breakfast and lunch. And last week we had 37 new families come through. Normally we have 6 to 8. And primarily those were families with school children because they didn't have breakfast or lunch that week. So just little things that we don't think about have really made an impact in our area about food insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Lindsay, I see you're nodding. I'm going to come to you shortly, but you want to jump in and share anything in terms of what you've seen?
I can definitely echo what Lisa just shared and how the pandemic has really enhanced the spotlight on gaps in service, or it's really stretched the gap in meal access. Food security itself exists when all people always have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs or their food preferences for an active and healthy lifestyle. So through the pandemic, we saw a lot of food come through the community, but did it reflect our community needs? And that's why I think the work that Lisa and the co-ops and those emergency food providers, they're really trying to cater to those resident, to those family network needs, in addition to some wraparound services, because we find oftentimes food access is not the only service that a family or an individual is looking for. It could also mean rental assistance or workforce alignment. There's a lot of wraparound resources that we can provide in that one-stop shop.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And we know that sometimes when we think about programs that help people who are having a difficult time, that a common criticism is, well, it's the fault of the individual, right? They're not working hard enough. They're not pulling themselves up by their bootstrap. Now, I remember an article that Linda Friend, one of the former directors at the co-op, in an article in the AJC, she said that that's not what she was seeing. This was years ago, that a lot of the folks coming in were basically kind of the working poor. Is that still what you're seeing for the most part?
We are, and we actually have a blessing box that we had an Eagle Scout build. He built it back in November, December, and we put it out. And so this box is something that we leave outside the co-op. So when we're not open, if someone comes in and needs, a quick meal, they've got something there that can tide them over until we're open. We're open 3 days a week to service our clients. And we are shocked at the amount of, I'll just give a great example, Gwinnett County Parapros. Because a Gwinnett County Parapro right now makes low 20s, $20,000. And so they can't get here during the time that we're open. And so they come in and use the blessing box to be able to subside. And so we've been working with some of them and trying to figure out how we can get them some food when they can actually come and get services. There was an example early on, a man and a woman who had just moved from UGA, who had just graduated, gotten their master's, family of 5 boys. One was diabetic and they were doing great. And then COVID happened and they all lost their jobs. And so not only were they struggling with that, but, food insecurity can also mean having the right type of food. And especially if you have somebody that has diabetes, correct? So unfortunately, a lot of what is inexpensive is high sugar, not healthy for you. And a lot of what we get at the co-op is not necessarily the healthiest of things, but we're trying to keep things that are shelf stable that we can get out quickly. And so that's a way that people sometimes come to us to try and get some help there. We've been very blessed that we've been partnering with a lot of farmers and a lot of other entities so that we can get fresh produce in, we can get fresh meat. We are partnering with a lot of our grocery stores. They'll give us meat that's about to go out of date, but we'll freeze it so that it's still good and usable. The Atlanta Food Bank helps partner us with many of those grocery stores to do that. And they can get us fresh bread that have helped us out. That's really a big help.
Mm-hmm. And Lisa, for those who wish to, Lindsay, did you have something you wanted to add? Lisa, for those who may either need the support and services of the co-op or want to help, what's the best way to do that?
So the best thing I would suggest to do is go onto our webpage. We've actually just redone it, and I'll try and put it in the chat in a little bit, but it's www.lawrenceville.co-op.org. And we've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. So the key things you would want to look at is there's a volunteer tab. If you're interested in volunteering, it talks about the days that we accept volunteers. And it also has a new session. So if you're new, you can sign up. We want to make sure when you come in, we can partner you with somebody and show you what we do. So that's number one. Number two, we actually have a donate page, and it is updated usually 3 to 4 times a week. It's got donating food and donating financially. So the donating food, I just updated it 30 minutes ago to say what we are in the most critical need of. We're also blessed in that not only can you drop it off at the co-op, but we've got about 5 or 6 churches that you can actually drop it off at. Their locations are on there. as well. And then the other thing I tell people to make sure they look at is there's a tab called Get Assistance. And so if you ever need help, or you know a neighbor or a friend that needs help, it talks about all the different co-ops in the area. I was mentioning earlier with the panel before we all got together, every city in Gwinnett County has a co-op, which is huge. Not every county does that. So every city has that. We do it by zip code to make sure everybody has fair access. So you can go on there and see what city services, what zip code, what co-op. And you can also get a look at some other partners that we work with in healthcare and utility and rental. We even have somebody we work with about clothing. All that's listed on there, so you can get an idea of who our partners are.
That's great, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim.
Yes.
Let me come to you next. And before we start, please let me take moderator privilege, because I don't want to forget, because we'll get to the end and I'll forget. Tim Daly, as we said, has been working for UGA Extension for 15 years. He's been such a wonderful resource in the county. We're losing him to Henry County, and I want to congratulate him on his new opportunity there. He'll still be working with extensions. But he has just been such an asset to the micro farm at GGC and gardeners throughout the county. And man, I don't know who's going to replace you, but they've got some really big shoes to fill. We're going to miss you. Thanks for everything you've done.
Well, thanks, Paul. I missed the county and everything, but it's just a better opportunity for advancement and a new field and some new endeavors down there in Henry County. I'll still be living in Gwinnett. Not that much. It's not, I mean, it's a little further drive, but not that much further. I know people that drive a lot farther than that. But anyhow, it's only 30 miles or something. I agree with what y'all's talking about, like the high cost of housing and everything. I mean, I don't know what an answer to it. You don't want a free enterprise society. That's some things we have to just deal with. But I really believe that this housing is coming. It's a bubble again, kind of like what happened back in the Great Recession. And I personally think that bubble's going to pop sometime in the next year.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at some of these studies, and I'm not that optimistic about this. I'm with you. But since, everything is so expensive, housing and gasoline, people need to cut costs. And certainly a good way of doing that is growing your own vegetables. Yeah,
that's right. You talk about inflation. I remember, I don't know how much y'all were around, but back in the 70s, when I was a young man, I remember inflation being a big issue, and it seems to have come back. I mean, it goes back a long time when I was a school child. That is a long time. But go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say these things tend to be cyclical. But let me ask you this though. For someone who's new to this, growing vegetable garden, what's a good way for them to start?
All right. Well, it's you don't have to have some space. You need to have full sun, or at least you gotta have afternoon or morning shade, access to water. Soil, pure clay soil really isn't the best for vegetables. So you'll need to add soil amendments like compost, peat moss, humus, and stuff like that, and mix it in good. Either till it or shovel it or rake it in. And you plant, I want to show you our vegetable planting chart.
Okay.
Y'all see that?
It's a little small, but I can
see if we can't blow it up a little bit.
Okay.
Let me see.
And I'm glad you're pulling this up, because I can see that it addresses one of my questions in terms of what's good to grow in Georgia and what's good to grow by season. So maybe you can speak to that as well.
Okay. The thing is we have what you call your cool season, warm season vegetables is like your tomatoes, peppers, squash, beans, cucumbers, things. Okra is a good example, we always say wait till after April 15th to plant them because cold weather like we just had recently can be harmful and detrimental. They need to be planted after that date, April 15th, the average last day of frost around here. Some plants I wait a little later, like the seeds. I wait till early May before I put them out in the garden because got the ground warm up, and particularly okra. I'd wait till about early to mid-May to put that out because they really do need warmer soil temperature. Then we have our fall season vegetables, which are like a lot of the cold crops, such as collards, cabbage, kale, mustard, kohlrabi, radishes, turnips. The main ones. You can put onions out. They tend to be grown during the winter time and harvested in spring, like our Vidalia onions, which and things like that. So you really basically your cool weather and your warm weather crops is what you can put out. There's a little overlap with some, but basically your warm weather, your cool weather crops are going to be petering out by now. And get ready to get those warm weather crops in. Your beans, I'm going to put tomatoes out in a couple of weeks. I got growing. There's all sorts of things you can grow. Containers is a good way. Like supposing you live in an apartment, you can use container plants. Community gardens is a good opportunity. But you got to get people involved in community gardens. And they need to stay committed.
Okay. And we've been talking about food insecurity and those types of issues. Can you speak to the nutritional value of some of these things that maybe people may want to grow as opposed to others that might have less nutritional value?
Absolutely. I know what you're talking about. These Dollar General, I don't mean to call out companies, but we know who they are.
That's
okay. Dollar General. And I'm not knocking them because they do have some great deals in there. I myself buy stuff in there all the time. And but they don't really have a whole lot of fresh produce. The closest thing they have are some canned vegetables, which is okay. It tends to be higher in salt, which ain't good for people like me with high blood pressure, but it's better than some of the other stuff in there.
Well, Tim, let me ask you this. If I had limited space and maybe could only grow 4 or 5 things, what would be the most nutritious things you recommend?
Well, I would recommend tomatoes are good. Beans, peas are also high in protein. They're very healthy for you, high in fiber. Those are things I would definitely recommend, what we call the leguminous plants, the beans, the peas, even peanuts, but most people don't grow those in the garden. That's cool.
And what about the ease of growing some of these things?
Pretty easy.
Pretty easy to grow.
Beans and peas, you just put the seed in the ground. As long as they got good conditions, they'll produce. And they're very good. I mean, they'll produce. And tomatoes, you can put them in the ground, and if they're happy, they'll produce. You start spacing them out. And there's other things as well, but you get these healthy fresh fruits harvested off the vine. That's a lot. You ever take a freshly harvested tomato and taste that versus a store-bought tomato like from Walmart or Kroger? That's better because it's fresh. It's got higher levels of vitamins and nutrients in it. What they're doing in the stores is they'll harvest tomatoes where in California or wherever when they're green, and they pump it with ethylene gas, which causes it that makes it ripen. Now, yes, it does have. I mean, it's better than all the junk, but it's not nearly as good as the fresh tomatoes.
Tim, let me ask you about this. You mentioned people who live in apartments, as a lot of folks do, and using container gardens.
Yes.
Is that fairly easy for folks to do?
It is. I can speak to it from a personal way. I lived in apartments back in the 1990s over in Norcross, back when the rents weren't so high, by the way. I remember moving into my first apartment over there in 1990, paying $400 a month. You can find that around. But anyhow, I had containers of vegetables growing, potato. I had some potatoes. I had tomatoes, pepper plants. I had growing. I threw some beans. I was a one-story apartment, and I grew stuff like that. Also had a flower bed and everything. It was real nice back then. But yeah, there are things you can grow. You just need to have some sunlight. I mean, you really need to have the sunlight. Not necessarily have to be all day, but the bulk of the day you need to have sunlight. You have to keep them watered, and harvest the vegetables when they're ripened. That's all in very important things. And yes, you can have some apartments. I've seen some quite elaborate, some very simple, but it can be done.
Okay.
And some people experiment with hydroponic, growing indoors, which is a whole other ball of wax, which is I'm not going to get into it because I'm not that knowledgeable about hydroponics, I confess.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about this. What about people who have enough space to grow a lot through the spring, summer, and early fall? Are they better off freezing or canning? Well, if they don't know how to can you all help with that?
Well, we absolutely can. That's more a family consumer sciences division program area. We have a lady, her name is Inez Beltran, and her staff, she's our fax agent. She's bilingual English, Spanish, and both of her staff members that work for her also bilingual. She does an incredible job, and she's the one who teaches classes on that.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Let's see. Oh, and let me just kind of conclude with this with you. I know that you have worked the Gwinnett County Fair a number of years. Mm-hmm. So for any gardeners that just get really good at this, how can they enter their produce? And how can they win?
Well, okay, first of all, Gwinnett County Fair, the first Saturday in the fair, we have our field crop exhibit. There's categories that you enter it in, and you can win some prizes, which are low dollar amounts, but prizes and a little ribbon. Basically, make sure you got nice, healthy looking plants that are attractive, and you want information, check on the Gwinnett County Fairgrounds website, and that'll give you all the information about entering in and what you need to do.
Great. And Tim, if people need help from UGA Extensions Gwinnett, how do they get help? Where do they go? What's
UGA Extension. All right, I'm gonna put it in the chat box.
Okay, I see someone has already put it in chat.
Gonna beat me to it. So anyhow, that's where you can go to our website. Oh, here, I'll even put my even though I'm leaving, I will give you my email address, and you can contact my UGA email address. It's still available. You can contact me at any time.
Okay. And you guys are still in downtown Lawrenceville,
right? That's right. The Gwinnett County Government Annex building on 750 South Perry Street, 4th floor is where the tag office is. We're on the 4th floor.
Okay. Well, I think most of us know where that is. Excellent. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Tim. Now I want to pivot to Lindsay. And let's see, Tim, we need to see if we can kind of clear the screen.
Okay, I'll go ahead and stop here.
I appreciate it.
Hold on just a minute. Where do you put down stop share? It says, hold on just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
You see? All right, I won't put that. Okay, there you go.
Okay, there you go. Okay. All right. Lindsay.
About time to go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tim.
I just said it's getting close to time to plant the spring vegetables. I'm looking forward.
Okay. Well, one last quick question. And you briefly mentioned it, you alluded to it. What's better for the newer gardener, seed or plants? Should they go to Lowe's, Home Depot, someplace get plant? What's that?
Both. You could use some of the better seeded or the things like beans, peas, squash, and cucumbers. Where you buy in transplants would be like the tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, herbs.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Lindsay. I'm so happy you're here because we have a history with Harvest Gwinnett from pretty much day one. When I remember you guys came over to GGC, and Dean Santos and Dave Durrell was there, and we were talking about what this, and Blake Hawkins, of course, and we were talking about what this program might look like. It's come a long way from a plan to fruition. Tell me, how has the program developed, and what are you all doing these days?
Can you believe it, Dr. Grant?
It's
From meeting on GGC campus and saying, Gwinnett County government wants to put a stake in community gardens. We want to leverage our public lands to bring folks on site, learn how to grow their own food, harvest, donate to partners, help us envision what that would look like. And that ultimately was Harvest Gwinnett. Harvest Gwinnett is overseen by the county's health and wellness initiative, Live Healthy Gwinnett. And we launched it back in 2019, and it really was a partnership between Georgia Gwinnett College, Dr. Grant, your colleagues, your students, to plan with county staff of what this could look like. We first were attempting to look at our recreation set-aside properties and see if any of those 250 plus would sustain a community garden. But ultimately, we came to the decision to put them on park land and within public properties where they had great access, where we had water hookups, sunlight, we could fence everything in, and just open that up to some hands-on learning. So we had been working for 2 years almost towards our first community garden located at Rhodes Jordan Park, the Lawrenceville Community Garden, in partnership with the City of Lawrenceville, Foodwell Alliance, Health and Human Services, because we did want to target this as a senior, an older adult food security asset, and where we want to connect community members through hands-on environmental education, learn how to plant fresh produce, but ultimately lead towards that improved health outcome. We broke ground on the first garden February 2020. And through the pandemic, we were able to leverage COVID CARES funding to build out 8 more properties in less than a year and a half. So we are at 9 community gardens right now that Harvest Gwinnett's amazing team oversees, in addition to some pretty awesome mobile kitchens. So it's not always making residents or community partners come to the garden sites. We will bring that education to any community wherever they are, whether it's an apartment or a mobile home or a summer camp, you name it. We are a traveling mobile service now.
That's great. That is really great. And in terms of the geography, have you pretty much developed throughout the county, or are you doing certain regions or certain parks in certain places? How's that developing?
Sure. We have a pretty good span right now. We had just gone through our 2020 comprehensive park master plan, and a community garden asset was pretty high on the residents' priority to have access to. So we're able to, our 9 properties are in Decula, Sugar Hill, Norcross, Lilburn, Lawrenceville, Snellville, Suwanee, Loganville, and Berkeley Lake. So if you're looking at that county map, we have reach in just about every area of the county and are always looking for some future garden properties to expand our reach.
Okay. And roughly how large are the plots? I know Tim talked about the benefit of people maybe who have apartments not having a lot of space getting plots. How large are they, and how do you go about getting one? And are you limited in terms of what you can grow there? I mean, if I want to grow some tall corn, is that going to be a problem for anybody?
It's funny you asked, Dr. Grant. So To begin with, all of our garden sites are pretty much set up the same. They have leasable plots that are 4 foot by 8 foot. They come with soil, we have the water connection, we have the tools on site, hands-on programming throughout the week. All you got to bring are your plants or your seeds, and most of the time we can supply those too. And of course, the sunlight is thrown in there free of charge on the sunlight. But the plots themselves are $35 for the year. Across all 9 properties, we have 285 plots total. And we are about to sell our 200th plot for the 2022-2023 growing season. So we're about a 65% capacity right now and always taking on more gardeners. All garden sites are equipped with those leasable plots, but they also have share rows. And these are much larger plots that our team and our community volunteers and our resident gardeners oversee. Any produce harvested from those share rows is donated back to our community partners like the Lawrenceville Co-op. So those are great collaborative relationships where across the county, we're donating those produce back to the emergency food providers. So to date, in the year and a half we've been in operation, almost 5,700 pounds have come out of those 9 gardens back to partners.
That is outstanding.
Which
really?
Corn, we learned we can grow in about 6 feet or less. It did really well, and it was pretty heavy, but everyone really enjoyed the sweet corn that we grew in those beds. So
corn is something you can grow. You just need to have space for it and watch out for the deer and squirrels. They like this. I lost my crop to that last year.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Lindsay, I know that the programs are trying to address the diverse needs of the county in terms of different cultures and tastes. Are there any specific plans for Harvest Gwinnett, or maybe there's some things you're doing with some of the other programs? And we certainly want you to segue into talking about the other fine work the county's doing to address food insecurity. So could you speak to that, please?
Sure. So we were always trying to be aware of what our resident needs are. And since we are in such a diverse community, we have a lot of resident gardeners coming back to us and saying, we really want to try this from our native community. And there's little but no things where we restrict that you can't try in your plot or attempt with us in our share rows. So we have tried an array of different types of squash, various kohlrabi, different cucumbers, all different array of peppers. We are trying out a various watermelon patch this coming growing season. But in addition to our community gardens and what our volunteers and our resident gardeners want to try, we try to have various options in our other food initiatives. A few include our senior meals. We have a few options of senior services and health and human services doing home delivered meals to clients on a weekly basis. And those come with an array of dietary options, whether you are diabetic or you need lower sodium, you name it, we have an array of options. Whether you are vegetarian or vegan, those all go into play of this program. Same thing with our summer meals. For the past 2 years, Gwinnett County government has operated under the USDA Summer Food Service Program. But going forward for 2022, Gwinnett County is making a stance where we will be funding the program through county operations, since USDA is putting some of their restrictions back in place. And most of those restrictions don't meet the Gwinnett standard of what our community needs. So beginning May 30th, 31st, we'll be opening 20 plus sites, providing breakfast and lunch, all that have various dietary components to meet our resident needs. It also includes our Tuesday food distributions with the Atlanta Community Food Bank. Those have been very produce heavy. Same with our mixed produce boxes coming from our Georgia farmers. And when we work with Gooder, that partnership with an amazing organization out of Atlanta to close meals during school breaks. We try to make sure our pop-up grocery stores or our early learner snack packs really meet the dietary needs of those age groups that we're targeting.
That's great, Lindsay. Gwinnett is really doing a lot, and you all are just doing a wonderful job addressing food insecurity. Lindsay, I had to ask, and probably need to do a little more research after this, but are there other counties throughout the country that are this engaged addressing food insecurity that you are aware of? Are there other models?
We've had
in the state too, I guess.
Yeah, we've had the opportunity to talk to a few of our metro partners who are, of course, making some strides in their communities, but really show them the best practices that have been working well in Gwinnett County, where some programs are county supported or county funded, but we really leverage our community partners. Not a lot of counties have the dedicated co-ops that Gwinnett has, or the dedicated faith ministry of these amazing churches that are coming to us who pick up produce boxes, but then take them back into their communities where they already have that built trust with residents and really know their family dynamics to support them in some other wraparound services. So the more we can talk about the innovative models that work here in Gwinnett County and share them with other agencies, we enjoy and continue to do so. For example, Harvest Gwinnett will be presented on Wednesday. We have about 130 recreation programmers from across Georgia coming to Suwanee, and they'll be learning about our community garden program, how we leveraged park sites, how we leverage the mobile kitchens in that service, not always making folks come to us, but us going to them.
That's right.
That's great. That's great. Well, perhaps we have some time for questions. I want to make sure we didn't miss any. And if there are none from the people who are viewing, perhaps some of the panelists have questions for each other. So I'm going to see if I can see some of these. And Ron, feel free to jump in if you see something too.
Yeah, there are two. Do you want to take those two? Do you see them? One is an anonymous attendee.
Okay.
And I think that she's making more of a statement in the Q&A, and she is stating that sale will be held inside our greenhouse located right outside of building 600 at the Lawrenceville campus. And that's at Gwinnett Tech's annual spring plant sale, April 19th through the 21st. And it is 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Oh, that's
great stuff. I'm going to go over there myself and get.
Yes, I've gone there too. They do have some wonderful plants. And they have a wonderful program too for those who want to learn more. So that's great. What else do you see, Ron?
We have two more. We have one from SCAR. Hi, I'm a UCF graduate and relatively new to Gwinnett County. I was an intern for Fleet Farming, which is like a combination of all of the organizations that have been featured. My question is if there are any similar-minded organizations that focus on climate action or sustainable development goals as a whole.
Anyone want to speak to that one?
You might want to check out the Nature Conservancy.
Okay.
I think each organization kind of has their own. I mean, for us at the co-op, we take anything that it's expired or out of date and we send it to a farmer to feed to the pigs. We recycle our cardboard. So I think all of the organizations represented here today are really working hard to make sure that we're protecting the environment and doing everything we can there.
And Tim, do you know about any leadership in the area of composting? I know, Lindsay, you mentioned what was the organization?
That would be great if we had a county composting. DeKalb County does that, but we don't. The city of Lawrenceville, they give out mulch and compost one day a week. I don't know. But I'm afraid that's all I know. I'd love to see something but you know how that's above and beyond my pay grade at the time.
Well, Gwinnett Clean and Beautiful, I know, works through their school waste initiative. and looking at getting that recycled out or back through compost. So that too, I would offer to look at Gwinnett Clean and Beautiful.
Okay.
And how they leverage some relationships. But Foodwell Alliance, they do have some composting best practices. I know we've reaped the benefits of that, of having some compost donated, but then also through Tixie Fowler's group. Dr. Grant and Tim, remind me, who's Tixie Fowler?
Yeah, we know Tixie.
Right.
Yes. They've been fantastic.
Sure.
Another question: what is the biggest impact residents can make, either individually or as a group, to help with food security in Gwinnett?
I know for me, the biggest thing is awareness. Tom, who's our executive director, and I always say, if we could just get 5,000 more people to know about us. I'm always amazed at how many people don't know that we're here and what it is we do. And that's just not us as the Lawrenceville co-op, but all the co-ops in Gwinnett. So we have Facebook pages, we have Instagrams, follow us, get the word out about us. The community is huge for us, especially in Lawrenceville. We gave out, 41,000 boxes last year, which is about 4.1 million pounds of food. And the Gwinnett County or Lawrenceville residents, and Decula residents, they donated almost half of that. And that was in 2021. So the community is a huge impact to us. And then, of course, financially, they are supporting us all the time, too. But the bulk of what we do comes from the community support. And probably a third of that comes from individuals. So let us come talk to your organizations. Let us come talk to your neighborhood, your scout troop. Get the word out for us so that we can help those who really need our services.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I definitely agree with Lisa. It is that manpower that residents can take action, come and volunteer, whether it's with an emergency food provider or delivering senior meals or handing out summer meals, on your lunch break between 11 and 1, working through, some mobile pantries, you name it. If you have the time to serve, there is an agency to be plugged into, but also be very aware of, those emergency food providers and the items they need, like Lisa was mentioning on the donate page, of what items they need that week or going into that month. Some of the time it's not food related. Sometimes it is those personal care items that they're not qualified when you use your federal funds. So that comes out of their personal pocket. So be very mindful of donating out those items that all those agencies need.
Okay.
Another question: any tips on best places to get seeds? Stores like Home Depot, online catalogs, do they expire?
Well, the thing is over time they're not as viable. The germination is not good. So it's best to get it for the current season. You get them at Home Depot, Lowe's, online catalogs, or places you can get them.
Okay. Awesome. I think we got a couple more here. Can you still get your soil tested at the county extension office?
Absolutely. It's only $8 per sample. I put my email in there. You email me, and I will be glad to give you directions on how to do it.
Awesome. If you have a garden and want to share your excess produce, are there any restrictions or requirements on what can be shared or handled?
Not that I know of.
Not for us, no. We will take produce any day of the week. We are blessed with mustard greens and herbs and from all sorts of gardens all over the city and the county.
But do make sure it's thoroughly washed and cleaned before you eat it.
Yes.
Get food poisoning.
Okay. Well, do the panelists have any questions for each other? About 4 minutes left.
I just think it's an encouragement to do more local growing, local farming, especially in urban areas, because there's plenty of spaces we don't think of I know real estate's kind of pricey, but there's many places you like under power line easements and things like that. Because instead of us constantly depending on food coming from another part of the country or from China or wherever, having that, I'm all for local. I mean, it's not just food, it's for a lot of different things. And you can see the supply chain disruption because we're getting everything from overseas. So,
And
my grandparents' age, most everything was manufactured over here.
Okay. I think I saw a question from, let's see, Patricia. I don't know if you see it, Ron. Is there a statewide discussion or collaboration on food insecurity best practices? Lisa, Lindsay, you guys?
Not that I know
of. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I will say, as the pandemic was first coming through and Gwinnett Cares was created, we did have a food security type roundtable where a lot of those major players got to talk with each other and help each other out. But I definitely think that's an area of opportunity for Gwinnett County, is to set that bar high of having all those in the emergency food realm communicate quite regularly and make sure we're targeting, the right challenges to conquer. And statewide too, I can say we love our partners at the Atlanta Community Food Bank and all they've done for us through the pandemic, and working through donating produce every single Tuesday. But we are working with them to try to set that new standard of working with county governments and how, some of the requirements that they must work within isn't always the Gwinnett standard that our residents need. So we're looking to show those best practices and why some rules and regulations might need to be updated to meet the current population's needs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think the Atlanta Food Bank is probably the best resource we have as an entity right now, just from the fact that it services such a large portion of Georgia, even though it's the Atlanta Food Bank, when you think about how big North Metro Atlanta is. So we are at least able to be in contact with them and kind of, see what's going on and work together. But like Lindsay said, it's not necessarily perfect or what we need here in Gwinnett County. Tom, our executive director, actually got to spend a week with the Augusta Food Bank, and Augusta has a wonderful food bank. And so we've been kind of partnering with them and seeing what they've been doing. Their needs are very similar to ours and very similar to Gwinnett County. So we're trying to do that now that the pandemic has slowed down a little, not a lot, but a little. We're trying to reach out to make sure we have best practices.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we're about at hour.
This has been very helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to take a lot of this down to Henry County, but I'm still available to help y'all out. We're all, we counties, we go across county lines. So y'all contact me if you have any questions or anything. We all work together. I don't know when or if they'll, who will be replacing me when. That's not my decision to make. But I've enjoyed working with all of y'all.
Well, Tim, we have certainly enjoyed working with you, and we again want to thank you for all your wonderful years of service. Really appreciate it. And at this time, I'd like to thank everyone on the panel who has joined us this evening. Lisa Ingberg from Lawrenceville Cooperative Ministries, Lisa Jorstad from Gwinnett County, and of course, Tim Daly from UGA Extensions. This was a great conversation. Also, as always, I want to thank the Gwinnett Remembrance Coalition, as well as Gwinnett County Public Library and staff members, particularly Marion Mayer and Ron Gautier. I think I'm getting closer. And of course, the Gwinnett Curious who tuned in to join us this evening. We're happy you were able to join us. Next month, our last program for the season will be on legislative districting and election issues in Gwinnett County. And that's going to be on Monday, May 9th at 7 o'clock. So I hope folks will be able to join us. I want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. And again, have a very good evening. And thank you. Stay safe, well, and healthy.
Thank you,
Thanks
Dr.
again to all the panelists.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
You all too. Take care. Thanks.